Right, so the first thing you need to see is that it's an excerpt. Now, what does the word excerpt mean? Okay, an excerpt means it's an extract. So it's taken out of a whole, source. Okay, that's the first thing that we need to notice. Remember, this is contextual. Oh, no, this is the wrong one. Sorry, guys. So this is contextualization. Okay, this is where you find out where your reliability is. Okay, where your bias is, where your value is, where your usefulness is. Okay. So if we read it, okay, it says, with the approach to the 25th anniversary of the Battle of Cuta Carnival. So in other words, this is that battle. Now, with what we know in the background, we know that this is that battle that took place with the varying viewpoints, okay? The controversy dispute over who won this key engagement in Southern Africa history is being revisited. In other words, who won this? If you're an MPL member, you would think that you won it. If you are South Africa, if you're from the South African Defence Force, you would think that you won it. So in other words, the first question here is, why, according to the source, was the Battle of Cuta Carnival regarded as controversial? So what does the word controversial mean? The word controversial means that there are lots of different ideas on it, okay? People can't reach a synthesis of who was involved in this controversy, okay? So in other words, that first answer, why is it controversial? Your answer would be, okay, we cannot agree, or it cannot be agreed upon. Who won the battle? Okay. Number 2. Identify 2 reasons in the source why South Africa's ground forces decided to withdraw. So in other words, we're literally just going to the source and we are looking at why did the South African Defence Force withdraw. Okay, so we carry on reading. It says here, the SADF won a tactical victory at the Lompo River. But the repass of the subsequent later frontal attacks on well-fortified positions in Tampa proved a decisive setback. The loss of the South Africans' Air Force's superiority, there we go, so that's one reason, meant that the ground forces had to withdraw, and they had heavy losses. Okay, so those are your reasons. It's literally just from the source. Why did the South African Defence Force have to withdraw? So your answer is the South African Defence Force was outmaneuvered. Okay, and there was a loss of Air Force superiority. So that's literally, guys, just from the source. Okay, number 3, why do you think some people believe the SADF won the Battle of Carnival? Use evidence in the source to support your answer. Okay, now if we go to the next little section, it says here, South African defense apologists, in other words supporters, invariably cite statistics to prove that its enemies at Cuta Carnival sustained far greater losses. Guys, that's straight from the source. In other words, those that support the SADF say that they must have won because the enemy had far more losses. Guys, it's straight from the source. The South African Defence Force enemy had more losses. Okay. And then it says here, comment on what the author meant by the SADF might have won many engagements, though not the war. Okay, so now we need to go back to what was the South Africans' end game here. Remember, South Africa was fighting Angola. Why? Why was South Africa fighting in Angola? Because they didn't want Namibia to gain independence, and they didn't want communism to spread in Angola, because it might spread down into Namibia, and then it will spread into South Africa. Okay? So in other words, what does it mean South Africa might have won battles but didn't win the war? In other words, they could have won smaller fights within the Angolan war, but their main end game to try and keep Namibia in, under their protectorate and to stop the spread of communism, they didn't achieve that. They had to pull out. Remember when those peace accords were signed? So that is your answer. Okay, your answer is South Africa. Okay, the SADF won small fights, but did not achieve Namibia staying a protectorate, and stopping communism in Angola. Okay. Then the last question I just quickly want to go through is, why do you think a source like this is useful? Why is a source like this useful to a historian? Why is it useful? Okay. Now, in history, I'll give you a little tip. Every source is useful because from every source in history, we glean information, even if it's biased, even if it's not reliable because it's biased. As a historian, we gain something from that. Okay, so we gain the fact that even if a source is biased, we can see that bias in the source. So in other words, when we're looking at a source like this, why is this source valuable? Well, immediately, if you look at a source like this, we know it's valuable because you're learning more about the different viewpoints in Cuta Carnival. You're learning about why the South Africans were there, etc., etc. Okay? Guys, I'm not going to write that one down because I don't have much time left and I still want to do a little bit of Black Power with you. I hope I've clarified some issues of yours with Angola. Remember, the big issue that we have in Angola is that there are 3 liberation movements who fought against the Portuguese. They then have to try and run the country together until an election, but fighting breaks out between them. And at the same time, you've got these other countries that are trying to also get involved there to either stop the spread of communism, okay, to make the country capitalistic. South Africa is there because they want to keep Namibia under a protectorate, so they want to keep Namibia in their pocket, as well as trying to protect that hydroelectric plant there. And you've got Congo and Zambia also involved. Okay, and then you look at the Battle of Cuta Carnival, which is basically when the MPLA's armed forces and the South African Defence Force get in each other's faces. There's a stalemate, so they retreat, and you've got all these different varying viewpoints about what happened there. And depending on which area you come from, depending on which political party you back, which superpower you back, that is your viewpoint. Okay, so I hope I've clarified that. I feel like I've rushed a little bit, but I think it's because it's just such a big theme, such a meaty theme to get involved in. I'm now quickly going to move into Black Power.